Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets. Welcome to our latest edition of Adeptus On Air, and today we have Eric DeGotti, who is a longtime fitness trainer of a lot of popular athletes and people you probably don't know as well. But he's trained everybody, so he's going to share a lot of his knowledge with us today. Eric, so thanks for joining us, and just to get started, just kind of take me to the beginning of your fitness journey and how you got involved in the industry in general.
Well, thanks for having me, James. And then there's kind of two backstories to it. Is one is my own personal story of I had some really bad back issues when I was younger, and to the point where I was sleeping on the floor for probably about 6 months, couldn't get any relief, and just being stubborn, not going to the doctor. Finally, went to the doctor, and just went to a general practitioner. Had no idea what to do, and he, after waiting 3 hours in his office, he looked at me and said, "Well, it could be anything." And I said, "Really? That's your answer?" And so I just said, "Screw it." I went to the gym. I looked at everything that said back on it, and I just started doing exercise, and my back felt better. And I said, I want to learn more about this because like there's more to this. And then, the second story is, I had one of my grandmothers who had 4 knee surgeries, including 2 replacements. And not because she was, skydiving or she was, jumping off cliffs or anything like that, but it's because she just never got the attention that should have. And it completely changed her life to the point where she needed a morphine pump at one point. And like, that's, like, I wonder if I had gotten to her when she first started feeling some knee pain, that she wouldn't have had that experience, and how much I could have changed the trajectory of her life, had she gotten the right, attention and the right, advice.
Wow, that's a very good point about preventative training because I don't know if many, I really don't think of it that much. I think when I go to the gym, I just want to, be in better health or, bulk up or whatever the reason is, lose weight, for a lot of people. But just kind of go into preventative training and how important that is because the two cases you mentioned are, kind of indicative of that.
Yeah, so if that's what gets you there, like looking better at the beach or, looking better in your t-shirt, that's great, right? And if that, because we got to get you there first. But that doesn't often keep you there. And you need to have something a little bit bigger in terms of purpose to keep you there. And so what that may mean is different for each person. So for me as a dad who's, now in his 50s, I'm looking at it that I do the things that I do, so I don't want to become a burden on my family. Like I don't want to be the one that they have to take around to different doctors, and I can't go around and do stuff. Or just as simple as like when we went on vacation last year, to be able to go out and go for a hike with my family, and they wouldn't have been able to do that if they had to worry about dad's bad back or his ankle or his heart or any of that kind of stuff. That I don't want to miss out on those things, and I don't want to rob my family of those things. So I don't want to be a burden, and so that's a much bigger purpose than bigger biceps. Now, if you can get both, that's a nice added feature. But having a little larger purpose of a bigger why is what keeps people coming back. Because if not, then stats show we just had New Year's, and so the stats show 60 to 70% of people that join a gym will be gone by March. Right. That's why you can't get a parking spot in the first week of January, and by March it's empty again. And so because most people just go and they either don't have a plan or they don't have a higher purpose, and so because of that, they just fall off.
Oh, wow, no, that's a good point with that. Have you found, people in our age group, fathers and things like that, more upper body injuries, or does it, just gender? Does it change with gender? Lower body, upper body? What kind of areas should men and women be working on as parents and
Okay, so
preserve? Like, as you
there's yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that's the biggest thief of our function is our desk and chair, right? And we spend most of our time seated, in front of a computer, and so because of that, it leads to certain tendencies. You lose mobility in 3 primary places. First, one is your ankles, two is your hips, and three is your upper back, kind of rib cage, and your what's called your thoracic spine, your middle back. And so because of that, that, will lead to issues in the shoulder, issues in the low back or knee. And so a lot of that comes from first creating mobility in those three key areas, and then also creating some stability through your trunk and through your pelvis and spine through having a good, core strength and stability. Those are the key areas that usually, if you can address those, most problems will clear up. And then obviously, if it gets too far, well, then we have to go a little bit more and sharpshoot a little bit more into what the specific problems may be.
A lot of our audience are probably people that office workers, sit down at the desk, go to the office, or even if they work at home, are sitting down a lot of times in their home office. Would you recommend getting up a certain amount of times per day, or staying mobile, or how would you address that for
Yeah,
those that work
thousand
8 or 9 hours?
Yeah, 1,000%. The more you can get up and move. And so, people say, well, what if I have a standing desk? Well, you can have a standing desk and stand in crappy posture too. So it's really just one, creating awareness of it, of kind of being aware of how you're holding your body and just not getting stuck in one spot for too long. Just not only for the postural effects that'll have, but also just the stagnation of just not moving. And then the other thing that I tell people is that what my industry has done is a really poor job of how they teach you what exercise is. And you get sold that you have to confine that you have to go to some special place that you need a membership for, and that you need to wear special clothes and you need to do it for an hour or it doesn't count. And that's nonsense. Like they've done some pretty significant research where you can have very impactful effects from doing short, we call them exercise snacks, where if you could just get up and, go for a walk at lunch, or get up and you can go, ride a bike or do something, do some mobility work for 5-10 minutes and do these little bites. I'd almost rather have that, because there's actually research that shows when they took people who had a half hour cardiovascular session versus 3 10-minute sessions throughout the day, the people with the shorter, more frequent sessions actually had longer staying power with their programs and just as good, if not better, effects. So I'd rather have you take it in small bites throughout the day than think, oh, I have to do this whole big thing. Because it's real easy when you have that big looming thing of, oh, I got to go for an hour and I got to find a parking spot and I got to bring my gym bag, that it's really easy to blow off. Where if you say, look, it's go for a 10-minute walk, right? That's a lot easier to handle and squeeze into your day. So that's the big thing, is just any chance you can get a chance to move, even if they've done research where they showed just taking the stairs versus the elevator makes huge impacts in your life. So any chance you get that opportunity, take it. It doesn't have to be confined into these fictitious rules that we've kind of made up about fitness.
No, and I hear a lot of those all the time, that you had mentioned it. And just two personal questions for me, just in my little workout journey. Um, I can't seem to make the treadmill enjoyable. How do you do that? As far as just the cardio part of it, the treadmill. And second, my traps. I don't know, like, I've been trying shoulder shrugs and things like that. How do you get that to activate, or is it just genetic and some people just have them and some don't? Just what's your thoughts on those two?
Okay, so let's first start with the treadmill. So you want to take a step back and say, okay, well, what are you looking to do, right? And so people just kind of say cardio, and it's just this blanket statement, and where there's a spectrum of things. There's everything, and people will categorize them into zones based on your intensity. If where zone one is just a very casual walk, zone two is a little bit more intense, all the way up to zone five is you're running for your life. And so within that, we need a little bit of everything. The bulk of your training should be in what they call zone two, where that's, you're working out, but we could still hold a conversation if you and I were on the treadmill next to us. And then the rest of you need to also have a day or two where you do kind of go all out. So now, how do I make that more enjoyable? Well, if I'm doing the zone two stuff, that's where listen to an audio book, watch TV, do something that, because it doesn't have to be that intense. You could just get something to kind of distract you. And that's the best way to do it. I mean, just for me, just listening to music is just kind of puts me in a different zone, and I don't have to think or, be distracted for that half hour. Now, if it's the more intense stuff, what my big recommendation is to gamify it, meaning we're competitive by nature. And so if you say, even if it's something as simple as I'm out in the neighborhood, say, okay, I'm going to try to run from this telephone pole to that telephone pole, and I'm going to try to do it in 6 seconds, right? And then if I do it, okay, boom, I did it. And now the next time I'm going to try to do it in 5, and then just kind of have those things and have make it into a little game, kind of compete with yourself. Or if you're jumping rope, say, okay, I got 30 seconds. I'm going to count how many touches I have. And then, all right, great. I got 40 touches in that time around. This time I'm trying to get 41. And that kind of makes it go way faster. You're challenging yourself, and it's not as, monotonous as anything else. Now, as far as the traps, is the goal to kind of more for aesthetics is to build your traps, or is the goal that you have tight, stiff traps? Because both are really common.
Yeah, I don't want tight, stiff traps. Just to
Yeah.
bulk it up, aesthetics kind of thing.
Okay, so the other misconception is most people think that we have to have special exercises to target every single thing that we do, right? And well, there's 400 muscles in your body, most of them with pairs on either side of your body, and so if you're going to do that, there's just so much time, required, and it's not necessary because you can, get a lot of birds at one stone if you know how to pick the right stone and know how to aim. So the biggest thing with building up your upper traps is doing things where you're either pulling or carrying heavy things. So, I have people who have some pretty developed traps who don't do any direct quote unquote trap exercises, but they'll do things like heavy deadlifts, heavy farmers carries, things like that, or even just holding heavy dumbbells when they're doing their lunges or step ups or things like that, or just, something as simple as just picking up heavy dumbbells and holding them, because not only will it have some growth effect on your traps, but it also is really good and healthy for your shoulder because that heavy distraction for your shoulder if you do it in good posture.
That's good advice with that to do pulls and okay. No, got it. I'll try that next time I'm in the gym. I appreciate that. All right, enough about common folks like myself. But you trained Olympians, NFL players, baseball players, All Americans. What are some common traits that you see in those that are athletically at the highest level as a trainer?
Yeah, so kind of going back to my purpose point, and this is whether you're, a Super Bowl champion or you're, just somebody who's, high achiever outside of athletics, is the common theme is what they have is they have non-negotiable habits. And non-negotiable habits are these things are going to get done no matter what else happens, in life. And so they're going to get in their cardio in the morning or their mobility work, or they're going to get in their skill work. They're going to get it in, and they're going to figure out a way to make it happen. They're not the I'll start on Monday type of people. Because those habits, as I tell people, basically, um, you know, they become who you are. They become what you're known for. So when you hear people say, "Oh, that guy's an exercise nut," or whatever it is, it's just because that person is consistent, and they're consistent because they have that non-negotiable habit that this, no matter what happens, I'm going to get this done today. And so, anything else may have to get pushed to the side or rearranged, but I'm going to get these things done. And so that's probably the biggest common thread of any high achiever that I've worked with is that they have a certain set of things now that set of things is different for each one of them, but they have certain things that are non-negotiable that is pretty much makes up who they are in terms of their makeup.
Interesting, interesting. And tell us about One Human Performance and all the great work that you do in the company that you built.
So going back, let's see, kind of tracing the steps a little bit. I started out, in personal training and kind of built up a following, and then I opened up my own facility back in this was '02, and then built it up to we were a 12,000 foot multidisciplinary center where I had physical therapy and chiropractic care and classes and all these different things. And at the time as I was building that, I was also getting opportunities to go out and teach and speak and train other trainers and coaches, as well as consult with teams and different organizations. And so it got to a point where I couldn't do all of it. And so I decided that I gave up the facility back in 2015. And then from there went on and like I said, continued to consult with a couple NFL teams, worked with athletes at all different levels, and as well as going out and teaching people in my profession all over the world, kind of teaching them skills of how to become a better professional and how to deliver our services a little bit better. And that's, now fast forward to today, that's still a big part of what I do is coaching and training and mentoring other professionals in my field. And then kind of going back to personally with my coaching, I've still have a bunch of athletes that I work with, but I've shifted my focus now to where a lot of my target audience is an older population, where it's active and competitive guys who are over 40, who are looking to kind of stay healthy and still be able to do the things that they want to do, who are not really ready for the rocking chair just yet.
And what's it like training other trainers? You know, like people that have expertise, obviously. Like what's the challenge there teaching people that are kind of in the know in your field?
I love it. I can't count how many trainers that I've helped mentor over the years and workshops I've been able to do. And like I said, been able to go over the world. And I think the biggest thing for me is to find trainers who are receptive and open to change and who are really looking to better themselves. You know, the expression of the wisest people are the ones who know that they don't know everything, and so and so with that, being able to share ideas and say, hey, listen, I've been doing this for 25 years. Let me not just teach you a bunch of stuff, but let me show you all the mistakes that I've made so you don't have to make those mistakes again. And that's really how I approach it, is to say, look, I see what you're doing, and I've actually tried that. Let me tell you where I found that to not work for me, and let me show you what I found that worked better. So it's not my knowledge versus your knowledge, or that type of thing. It's, hey, let me help you, because I've I've done this a bunch of times, and as much as I've learned, I've also screwed up, and that's the best education that I've gotten.
How has the industry changed over your 20 years? I'm sure, when you got into it, it was, there were some things that were kind of standard, and I'm sure things have changed. Even in the last decade, I would assume it's changed a lot.
Well, the biggest pivot point was the pandemic, and the stats are pretty scary. I think a colleague of mine said that prior to the pandemic, I want to say there was maybe 125,000 private strength coaches and personal trainers in the U.S., and that got wiped out pretty significantly, down to maybe less than half of that. And so now what
Wow.
you have is you have a new influx of professionals in the field. And there's a few things that I've noticed in terms of this new audience that I have to teach to, is that I had this conversation with a colleague of mine. I said, when you started, because he started about the same time as me, what was your number one goal every day? He said, I got up every day because I wanted to be the best trainer in the world. And that was my aspect as well. And that's why I took every course and read every book that I possibly could and try to get around the best people in the world as much as possible. Now that's shifted. Now there's a real low barrier for entry, meaning that you can get, and that's always been the case, where you can just kind of go get a weekend certification and start going. But even now, it's a lower bar for entry. If you have nice abs, you can be a quote unquote fitness influencer and tell people what to do for fitness, where you may have never trained anybody in your life, and you just lucked out and picked the right parents and had nice DNA. Um, and then on top of that, the goal now with a lot of the trainers is not so much I want to be the best, it's how do I build a business fast and easy? Because now you have theoretically a scenario where you have apps that can deliver your exercise programs, which is great. It helps me when I do virtual training with people around the world. But I can quite frankly go on ChatGPT, and if you gave me, James, here's what I want to accomplish. I want bigger traps, and I want this and I want that. I could put that in ChatGPT, and it'll give me an exercise program, and I can just take that and put it in one of these apps, and there's your program. And I really don't have to have any coaching skill. And
Yeah.
that'll work until it doesn't work, right? And so if you want to be one of those trainers, fine. Um, and good, because when your clients fail, they're going to come to people like me and the people that I coach, because there's an art to coaching that can't be done through AI or any of those types of things, of understanding how to actually write a program for a person as opposed to write a program for a scenario or goal. They're two different things. And so that's probably
Great
the
point.
biggest shift now, is that the art of coaching has been lost a little bit, which is sad for the industry, but it's good news for the coaches who really are good at coaching, because they're going to stand out.
Great point. Great point with that. And speaking at the, standing out at the highest levels, your work with professional teams. Explain how that is in your position when you work with the NFL team or a baseball team or a soccer team, which they have training staffs, I would assume. Well, I know from covering the NFL, they have training staffs. How does that fit in, from your side when you come in and work with those training staffs and those athletes?
Yeah, the old expression is it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. Meaning that if you go in and you try to make it about you, you will not last long. If you go in to serve and to help wherever you can, that's where you can really have a place because there is a lot to handle. As much as there's really full staffs there, there's staffs that have their hands full that they're up against it, number one, with time and access to the players. Two is their ability of what they can and cannot do. And so being able to come in as an kind of an outside voice to say, okay, well, let's see what you already have handled, and let's see what you're not handling, not by any fault of yours, but what I may be able to pitch in and help out with. And so that's number one. And then number two is being able to build trust and rapport that I'm not here to take your job. Right. And that's with this other staff members. And so I had to work hand in hand with strength and conditioning coaches and athletic trainers. And so getting them to appreciate that I'm not there for their job. I'm there to make their jobs easier. And then even for the players to getting them to understand that I'm not here to get you in trouble. I'm not here to do anything other than help you. The longer you stay out on that field, the better we all are. And so that's really my entire job. And however I can help you with that is, people need to appreciate that there's a guard that is up when you get to that level, and rightfully so, because everybody's coming at you with a solution and an answer. And as soon as they see an athlete get injured on TV, everybody thinks they have the cure for that. Everybody thinks they have the better way to get them bigger, faster, and stronger. And where is if you have the ability to build trust and rapport and say, look, I can help you, just let me know how I can help you. And then once they kind of see that window that you're there to serve, then they'll allow you to do more and they'll allow you to do more. And then eventually you can be kind of concierge to do everything for them. But that's really the biggest thing is that there's a lot of trust issues on both the staff and player side that you have to overcome. And you're not going to overcome it by battling it with your own ego. And so that's the biggest thing that I've learned from working at that level.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Super interesting. I remember covering the league. Players would get second opinions and things, from doctors. They had the team doctor, and they'd still go get second opinions on different things. So there was always kind of that, the team's going to be in best interest of the team, and the player has to kind of be in the best interest of the player. And there was always that kind of friction of how they work together. And you coming in with your situation, I'm sure that there's always kind of that tug and pull. Um, give me the difference between like training a baseball athlete versus a soccer athlete, or any two sports really, football versus baseball, or baseball versus another sport. I'm sure you have to kind of tailor it specific to whatever their role is with the team. If you're a pitcher, or if you're a quarterback, or if you're a linebacker, just give me kind of a macro sense of some of the differences.
So I'm going to steal a line from a colleague of mine where it's if you're looking at it, the analogy of a sandwich, same meat, different bread, right? So there's certain things that are standards that kind of everybody needs to be able to do. There's some, every movement that we do in life, whether it's on a field, court, track, in a weight room, comes down to a basic set of movements that everybody should be able to kind of do. And so those are the staples of your program. Now, which version of the lunge or the squat, there's some artistic interpretation and it's somewhat based on the person's abilities and goals. But everybody's kind of doing some variation of that main section. It's the peripheral stuff that gets a little bit different. And what you look at is the energy demands of the sport. Is this something that's explosive, kind of one-time event like baseball, where you're not swinging 7 times in a row, you're swinging one time really, really, really hard to create as much force into the ball as possible. Same thing when you're throwing, so forth. So that's a different dynamic than if I'm a midfielder in soccer, where I have to be going kind of continuously for a while, but nothing all that explosive. So that changes things in terms of the energy dynamics, in terms of the positions that you need to get in, and the shapes and postures that you need to get into. You need to play low or high, or you need to do a lot of rotation or side to side. Those things need to be considered. And then also in terms of how much force do you need to produce? An NFL lineman needs to produce a lot more force than a NBA point guard because NBA point guards aren't pushing around 400-pound guys. But how much force do you need to be able to reduce? How much speed do you need to produce? All those type of things need to be considered. So I just basically have a checklist that I go down and say, okay, can you, move well enough that movement is not your problem, that you have good mobility, you have good stability and control. And then from there, do you have enough strength for the demands of your position? Do you have enough? Can you meet the energy requirements of your position in terms of conditioning? And then do you have all the other peripheral stuff in terms of the dynamic demands of what's going to happen in your sport, and just kind of working down that checklist. And by doing an assessment, I can kind of see where you're at with those and then just fill in the blanks and then we reassess and readjust.
Excellent, excellent. Is the saying "no pain, no gain" true in training? You know how you're doing a rep of 10 and you're at 8 and it's hurting, but you're trying to get to that 10. Like, are those last two the gains there, or is it the first 5, or just
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. Okay. One is, and it may be semantics, but I don't like the word pain. Okay. Pain is ouch, that hurts. I don't want to do that anymore. Pain isn't a thing we want to avoid. Discomfort is something else, right? Discomfort is getting outside of your comfort zone, right? And everything great you're ever going to do in life is outside of your comfort zone, whether it's that last 2 reps in your set, or whether it's going for that dream job or asking out the prettiest girl at the school or whatever it is. Anything good happens outside of that comfort zone. So you have to get kind of comfortable being uncomfortable. And so the most basic way I explain it to people on day one of working out is that I need you to be two things. I need you to be successful. I need you to be challenged. So if I told you, James, I need you doing 10 reps, when you get to that 10th rep, there probably wasn't going to be an 11 or 12, at least not with good form. So I need you to get to 10 and you're pretty much done at 10. That means you were
Yeah.
challenged and you were successful. Now, if you get to 6 and your form goes to hell and you can't keep up, well, then you were really challenged. You just weren't successful. If you get to 10 and you could have done 10 more, well, you were really successful. You just weren't challenged. And so we need to find that sweet spot. And yes, you do need to get to that point. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of buffer within there when we have different terms that we use within there, where we'll have what we call reps in reserve, where maybe today's a day that you have a game tomorrow. And I'm going to say, look, we're going to work with everything with a -4 today, meaning when you're done, I want you to feel like you got at least 4 more reps because I don't want to tax you because you got a game tomorrow. Where other days it may be, look, we're going to push you a little bit beyond where you're capable of today, because that's where we're going to create that stimulus for growth.
Interesting, interesting. Where do you see One Human Performance in the next 3 to 5 years? What are some of your goals? You've already made it a long way, but I'm sure there's a lot more to do. Um, what's kind of your roadmap for your next 3 to 5 years?
The two big things that I'm growing is on the professional side, like I said, educating and mentoring trainers. A project I call Principles of Program Design with a partner of mine, Mike Perry, who's out of Boston, and him and I have a series of online content as well as we do live workshops once a year. Plus, we have a mentorship program where we take young coaches and trainers and physical therapists and so forth and kind of impart our almost combined 50 years of experience with them and continuing to grow that in our content. On the other side, like I said, on my personal coaching side of things, the only people I really see at this point is just by referral. Other than the thing that I'm growing most is something called Eternal Athletics, where I have something called the Ageless Athlete Blueprint. That's what I'm, as mentioned earlier, where it's for guys over 40 who are, that ultra competitive and person who still wants to train and compete at a high level, but is breaking down. They can't figure out what to do. They're following their old high school or college program and it just doesn't work anymore and they don't know why. And so that's the other aspect of my personal coaching side I'm looking to develop.
That's I can relate to some of that. Not that I'm an elite athlete, but just thinking in my head like, I could still do it. It's in my brain. I know I can still do what I could do when I was 25, but not so much now. No, that's awesome, Eric. And just for the audience, where can people find you online, your social channels, and find your company as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest place to go is the hub for everything is my website, which is just my name, Eric Dagati, EricDagati.com. Within there, you have links to podcast appearances like this one. You have links to my own podcast. You'll have a links to all the projects that I talked about, as well as right on the homepage, since I do a lot of public speaking and things like this, I created something called Ask Eric, where it's right on the homepage where if you have a question about training or health or fitness or performance, just put it in there. That goes directly to my email, and I get back to everybody within about 48 hours, try to answer the questions. And if I don't have the answer, I can at least direct you to a resource that does.
Excellent, Eric. Well, it's been a great conversation, and hopefully we got to answer a lot of questions for the audience. And I know I got some of my personal questions in, so I appreciate that. And thanks so much, Eric, for joining Adeptus On Air. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.